Good evening and welcome to For Fantasy's Sake, the other For Fantasy's Sake, here on the For Frequency's Sake podcast network. I'm your host, Doug. I'm alongside my boy Chris here, and tonight we are going to be talking about A Knight of Seven Kingdoms. And this episode is titled Squire, but Chris, this was all about betrayal. Have you ever been betrayed? Have you ever been so betrayed?
I'm surprised you take it that way, because I think deep down, Egg really wants to be a squire. He doesn't want to be himself. I think that's the biggest part of the shaving of his head there. But maybe we should give people some context so we kind of walk through what happened if they might not have watched the show.
Yes. Well, I was going to ask if you've ever been betrayed by, your podcast host not disclosing that they have a great Elmo voice.
I do have a great Elmo voice. It just depends on the day.
Don't think I was not going to not use that against you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we'll kind of start at the end of the episode, and then we'll kind of jump back to the beginning. So we find out in the closing minutes that Egg is a nickname short for Aegon, as in Targaryen. Where we see his older brother. I didn't catch his older brother's name. I just referred to him as douchebag in my head because that's kind of just the way that he was. That the older brother was, had dunked down. He was about to go bash in all of his teeth and do other horrible things to him when Egg has to come in and give up his secret and save his friend there. Now, full disclosure, I had actually caught wind of who he actually was. Reddit is a horrible place to live. But I had actually seen that spoiler actually before we got started. So I've been kind of sitting on that for a while. So I knew that it was coming. But Chris, did you know about that, and how surprised were you when you found out?
No, I think it's a lot like that Nate Bargatze bit that he does about I watch documentaries and I am always on the edge of my seat trying to remember what happened. And afterwards, I'm like, egg on. Oh, that makes sense. And they basically just kind of rub your face in it a little bit there at the end, where it's the fortune teller who tells you exactly, one day this is what's going to happen to you. And Dunk takes it as, oh, isn't that funny? And he's shaken by it. And so it's kind of the two worlds colliding there for the first time after I think there was a lot of closeness. I don't think it was a lot of trying to like pull one over on Dunk or anything like that. I think he legitimately just didn't want to go live his life as a Targaryen. And the name of the character you're trying to think of, Doug, it caught my eye this time because they did have the big introduction during the joust, and it's Prince Aryan Brightflame. And you can't say bad guy without Aryan being involved in there.
That's the truth. Yes. So we saw the ending there. I do think, in Egg's defense, I think he would have told him in time. I think this was one of those situations where his hand got forced. Would he have told him in the confines of our show? Maybe, maybe not. But again, this is high fantasy drama, so of course it has to be forced out of him at this point. Spoilers for the books, which again I haven't read, but as I was watching the recaps, one of them that I was watching over on Screen Crush, shout out to them, great channel, to Ryan and the guys over there. They actually said Aegon's fate that the lady predicted will actually be his fate 50 years down the road. So
yes,
which because they were like, we feel okay in spoiling that because the show's not going to cover that part of his life, but that is actually his fate. Is he? If you remember at the end of season 1, where Daenerys is trying to fire up the eggs in that big circle of fire, and bring the dragons back using that, he tries to do the same thing without success at the end of his life. So
gotcha.
So spoilers for how all of that ends. But yeah, so we've got we kind of saw that betrayal. Uh, the other kind of big betrayal, and it was kind of from Dunk's point of view, and that maybe kind of was when we first our got our idea that maybe our new Targaryen friend maybe wasn't the greatest of guy. Um, was after the joust, and Duncan couldn't believe that a knight would betray kind of his honor so much as to willingly attack the horse, which was probably the hardest scene in this whole show to
Hmm.
watch. Was um, the because he even points out he's aiming too low. Um, like he knew exactly what he was doing, and it was hard to watch as an animal lover. As I've got a zillion critters running around this house, but it was kind of hard to watch, and then you see the ramifications of it afterwards, and it was they wanted to tell us right up front that this is not a good dude, and I think they did a really great job of saying this is not a good dude.
Yeah, I think you're right about that, and it feels like it's right in line with that Targaryen kind of like Draco Malfoy type of thing, where it's like, it's not really as much of a break in the rules as it's a break in honor, and that's why that they're digging a little bit deeper than our heroes would actually do here. And I getting back to your other point about how it spoils the ending, uh, the only part that I thought about was the Jamie Lannister side of it, because Jamie's the one who ends up, ultimately killing him, and how he recaps kind of what happened and that he felt bad about it because he had like such an appreciation for him also at the same time. So there's a lot going on there, and I think you're right that this was a good way to bring this character in, show that they're extremely dubious too, but to build it up for that culmination at the end where you're like, well, this has kind of been a departure from Game of Thrones. We haven't had like the really like awfulness or the bleakness of it. And like even when it comes to, okay, we're gonna see the horse get put down here, the camera tilts away from that. And it's Game of Thrones. They don't tilt away from that. Like if it's a regular
Right.
Game of Thrones, show, we're gonna see all the gory details on that. But here they shielded our eyes from that. I think similar to what Dunk was trying to do for Egg is kind of, keep the violence away from him. He didn't like seeing it, but I think it we get kind of a double meaning there because he doesn't like seeing it, not just because the horse is going to get put down, but he doesn't like seeing it because he knows the broader context of it, as that's his family member doing that. It's not just as some guy out there to him. This is a part of kind of who they are as these guys that are always the bad guys or the people who are broken in some way mentally. So I think it's kind of a nice way to look back at that moment now of, don't watch. We know you don't want to watch. To he doesn't want to see it because that's his family, and this is supposed to be his fate. He's supposed to become one of those people.
Yeah, I think you're right, and he's trying to like. There's no saying that he hasn't seen it before. We don't know that he
Right.
hasn't seen his brother do something hideous before,
Hmm.
but we see Dunk's instinct is to shield him from that because somebody who's 9 or 10 shouldn't have to see that at that point in their lives. And so he's
Yeah.
trying to. He knows it's a brutal world. He knows that jousting is a brutal business, but he's trying to keep him as safe and as I don't want to use the word pure, but as safe and childlike as he can while he still has that opportunity.
Yeah. I like that they have kind of this pretty good episode where you see them connect, even in a little bit of a more meaningful way. And I think this is how much Egg wants to hold on to his secret, is that he could have stepped in and he could have broken up that fight between Arian and the girl pretty easily, by just revealing himself there. But he's so committed to not revealing himself that he goes to get Dunk to do it. And then when he sees that Dunk is getting put in the blender on his behalf, that's when he has to finally step up and say his piece in it too. It was kind of funny. It I was watching it, and my wife was secondhand watching it at the end of the show. She knows Game of Thrones, and she's like, "I don't wanna see him get his teeth knocked out." And I was like, "It's not that kinda show. It's not gonna be like that. Something's gonna happen here. He's got too much plot armor at this point. So, Doug's gonna come through this okay."
Yeah. I was actually kind of worried for the teeth though, because we know turns out to be a great knight, but you can do that without teeth. So I was like, there was a little bit of worry on my part. What was
Okay.
going to happen to him, especially since, well, at least on my TV, it told me that I still had. Once we got to the end, it told me I still had like 10 more minutes to go. So it must be like all of the after credits or whatever. But I was just like,
Mhm.
we're not there yet. I still got 10 minutes. How are we getting out of this one? And then it cuts, and I'm like, okay, fine, that'll work for me. It was, and I liked how the music kind of swelled too. It was a very orchestral, very much you felt the music in that moment of whatever the emotional of dun 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 is. The the oh my god, I just realized what happened to me type
Mhm.
thing. So I think this coming episode will be very interesting to see kind of the fallout of that. But I did like this episode. I did like the kind of the reveal, um, because we knew. I mean, we all knew how Dunk felt about the puppet lady, um,
Mhm.
and so we knew that the instant that she was in trouble, well, the instant that Sir Douchebag started talking to her, that you knew that he was up to no good, and you knew that Dunk was going to have to come in at some point and kind of rescue her. We did see him actually hold his own in kind of a bar fight too. This is the first time we actually got to see him in action.
Yeah.
He can very much hold his own until he gets like six guys on him holding him down.
Right.
Um, so he's got a good shot here just because he's the size of a tree.
Well, I think it did a good job of also punctuating that fight where there's a moment where he could pull up and it wouldn't have been so bad for him, but instead he just leans into it even more. So I think that shows you that when he's determined, he's gonna follow through, whether he knows it's good for him or not. And then the interaction between Egg and Aaron, it's very good because it does seem like two brothers fighting over a toy of some kind when he's bartering for Dunk, getting his teeth knocked out or not. So it's just kind of that family relationship where they throw a lot of stuff at you all at once, but it's done in such a way that it's just kind of that kind of way that both of them are having that back and forth together that makes it feel pretty genuine.
Absolutely. And just gonna go back on the betrayal thing. I think that's what set Dunk off the most was seeing him hurt a woman because a true knight in Dunk's mind would never do that. So to
Right.
see him in there just callously breaking her finger, that was the
Hmm.
tipping point for him, and he was just like, "All right, it's game on at this point."
I One of the better parts of the whole episode, I thought, was kind of the opening too. We get to see Egg kind of preparing for the joust and his squiring duties and everything that he's planning on doing. Um, it just opens with them being a couple of dirty birds living out underneath of a tree and being as dirty as can be. And then it starts off with that back and forth about, you need to go take care of the horses, and then, "Do you know how to sew?" "No." "Okay. So, why don't you go take care of the horses then and brush them down?" And he's like, "'Cause I say so, and I'll punch your face in if you don't do it." But then there's that kind of arc, I think, that culminates there of he doesn't want to be his former master. He doesn't want to be like, "Do it or I'll slap you." he changes course and he teaches him something instead. And I think that was a kind of a meaningful little interaction just to show you how connected they had become. They weren't strangers anymore here. These are two people that are starting to care about each other and thinking about things in more of a long-term way.
Mhm. Yeah, and you can see Dunk kind of making that choice of going, I want to do things a different way than what I learned. I'm trying to break that cycle of violence there. And they did. They had that conversation as well. And Egg asked him, he's like, can I stay on as your squire after this? And he's like, look, I'm going to lose in the first round. I'm going to lose all my stuff. I'm not going to. You're not going to have anybody that's kind of squire four. I'll be barely a knight at that point. And he's like, well, yeah, but you're planning on winning this thing, aren't you? So when you win it, can I still do it? He's like, sure. So I think that was a nice moment as well of the show. Yes, long term, Egg's been kind of thinking about that. We've already mentioned that he's the brains of the operation, um, but to see that nice moment of Dunk was trying to stay in reality and maybe a little bit of pessimism, where Egg was like, "We still have hope. We haven't, nothing's happened yet, so we still have the hope. You still have the chance to go win this thing. Maybe we, if that happens, I'm down to stay."
And I think you get the best moment of, as you coined it, dunking on Dunk, where you have, he's super worked up about getting ready to go and have this first bout of joust, and he's throwing up all morning. He's not himself, and then he talks to Egg, who tells him, well, you can't even enter today because you've got to either be highborn or someone of renown, and you don't even have a shield yet. And so it's like, what I get all upset for, well, I mean, who knows, right? So
Yeah,
it was a nice moment.
yeah. It was nice to see that he was human and he had anxiety about the whole thing, and then it all kind of went away when he's like, "Oh, I don't even have to fight today. Okay, that's fine." So then they went and watched and enjoyed their time, and they had kind of that brotherly little thing where they were kind of making fun of each other in those voices. Um,
Mhm.
that was a nice touch as well, just to kind of cement that bond of how close they'd really grown over the course of just a couple of days.
Yeah, you get a really good reaction shot of Egg, like, seeing the joust and, like, that pure excitement and joy on his face, and I thought about that afterwards, and I was like, it looks like it's the first time he's ever seen a joust, and that can't be true considering who he is. But maybe it's the first time seeing it from that perspective. Maybe that's what that moment's kind of about, is he's seeing things from a common perspective or maybe a closer view than they would have being highborn, sitting up higher, in those seats where they're further removed from everybody and they're further back. So maybe it's a completely different experience for him here, and that's what that's about.
Yeah, I wonder too if because he is part of that family that they're telling him, you know, you can't stand up and cheer and go all crazy when all this
Right.
stuff happens. You have to be restrained because the the face we want to present. And
Mhm.
here he gets to let loose and say, and go crazy when big things happen.
Yeah, we called him a Knight fanboy, so it was weird to be, like, in my head thinking, "Oh, is this his first time seeing a joust of some kind?" When he knows literally everybody and he seems to know all the tactics and everything too. So it just kind of all fit together after having a little more context for it.
Yeah, yeah. And then speaking of him knowing every night, he literally recognized the one-eyed guy. Well, frankly, by his one eye, but he recognized him right off and knew all about him and all about his exploits, and seemed to revere him quite a bit. So it was probably the equivalent of meeting, maybe not LeBron or Jordan, but maybe meeting Scottie Pippen, maybe meeting somebody like Derrick Rose, somebody who maybe is a little bit lower status, but still could be, a hero to you growing up.
Doug, you gotta keep with the eye analogy. It's Horace Grant. It's an easy one.
Okay, yes, good point. Yes, that was I missed that completely.
uh,
But yeah,
well,
I
and
thought but I like that little interaction as well. He's like, I know who you are, and you're amazing.
what did you think about Dunk? And I think they're gonna have to abandon the storyline, and it kind of makes me sad. Uh, Dunk having the opportunity to throw the first joust in his favor. There's a lot of money to be made because everybody's going to bet on, the tried and true uh, jouster. I think it's the top of the apple dumpling gang, and people are going to bet on him. Nobody's going to bet on Dunk. Will you throw it for us? Kind of saying it without saying it.
Right.
Kind of has to outright say it because he's talking to Dunk, so he has to say it a little bit. But he gets that offer, and we are kind of waiting on him to decide what to do. Do you think the end of the episode indicates to him that he was deciding not to do it because he walks past the guy when he has an opportunity to like give him the nod or to say something to him when he walks past the game master, and he's kind of just like doesn't even give him like any indication that it's on in any way whatsoever?
No, I think it's no question in his mind that he's not going to do it because again, he's not going to betray his honor. Just going back to that betrayal theme here, he sees that as a betrayal of the job of being a knight, and he's like, "Why would you even consider that? Like, it would never even cross his mind to do something like that." And
Mhm,
then he was like, "No, of course not." And then when he walks by him again, he's kind of feeling kind of stupid because he's like, "Well, I turned him down. Does that mean I've now limited other myself to other opportunities?" Because sometimes
mhm,
when you're a person who doesn't have a lot of choices or a lot of options, and you have somebody who has a lot of power, you'll say yes to things simply because you want to open as many doors as possible, and you feel like if you say no, you're closing a door to something. And I feel like that's where that's kind of the decision that he felt, but he was again, he's so honor bound that he would never do it.
yeah, I think you're right. The real issue that I came back to was you're supposed to win. You're supposed to wanna win, and it doesn't matter if they pull him, but not this guy's gonna keep up. If he's the I just want it to look right, like, it wouldn't look right, maybe?
Right. Yeah. If the other guy kind of took a dive, took a, made it look good, but eventually just kind of did it himself. Yeah, that might have gone over a little bit better. Where maybe Dunk like hits him and he pretends to knock out, pretends to be knocked out, where he's not really knocked out, but he's doing it so that Duncan can win.
Or if Dunk goes way too hard and he ends up killing somebody just because they're trying to take a dive the whole time, that would be a bad one too.
Yes. Yes. We get very much shades of Mice and Men. Is that the right one with the
Lenny
yeah, Lenny? Very much.
or the rabbits.
Yeah, very much. Yes, very much feel that in this story. I get very much those kinds of vibes here in a George R. R. Martin type way.
Yeah, I like the reveal in this episode, and I think you're right. There's a lot of honor storylines that kind of come to a head here. There's a lot of betrayal that happens here. I think it just comes down to Dunk doesn't really know anything about this whole world. Like that literally everyone around him is lying or scheming or has some sort of agenda, and he doesn't. And that's what separates him from like I think the rest of the series is that he doesn't have an agenda. He's here to fight in this tournament. He's here to win. Everybody else has their own thing going on.
Yeah, he's definitely got his blinders on and his naive rose-colored glass of the view of the world. But
Yeah.
he's but that's That's what makes us all love him is that he's that innocence.
Yeah, yeah, true enough.
We did get a small Baratheon moment of a shirtless dancing Baratheon, which was always great. Singing, I still have no idea what he was singing. I could not understand a word of him, which was great acting because he's probably supposed to be drunk as a skunk. I had no idea what he was saying, but I was like, okay, that was great.
I know we got a ways to go here, but do you think this kind of kicks off the splinter? I know they're probably not all friends because it's Game of Thrones, but do you think it kicks off the splinter of Baratheon? And obviously, there's a love in the Stark household of Dunk and Egg in that story. Do you think that uh, he's calling people in the next episode to stand beside him? That's where people decide to stand up to, the Targaryens at this point.
I don't, so next episode's episode 4. I was gonna say I would see that more towards the end of the series, but we're kind of 2/3 of the way through as of the next episode.
We're
Um,
halfway there.
I know, um, which is why we had the big dramatic reveal
Yeah.
because that was our mid-season finale. Uh, yeah, I guess I could see that because we saw earlier, and again, shout out to the folks over on Screen Crush. They made the point of when we see Sir Douchebag kind of kill the horse, we see the crowd not like it, and they're coming out of from behind the fences to go get it, to attack him,
Hmm. Yep.
and they have to be held back by security. We'll call
Kingsguard. Yeah.
it. Yeah, and they're throwing rocks. And as the folks over on Screen Crush said, 70 years ago, when they still had the dragons, they wouldn't dream of doing that because they'd all
Nope.
just be barbecue. But now the dragons are gone. They're looking a little bit more mortal. They're willing to take a couple more chances, plucking a guy with a rock who held up just as well as Superman did in the latest movie,
Hmm.
taking one to the back of the head. Only Clark didn't have armor. Uh, but I think where we see that, I think where I was going with that was um, they've got they're looking a little bit more vulnerable now, and I think if somebody thinks that there's a power play to be made, this would be their opportunity. Whether that be Baratheon or Lannister or the Apple Dumpling Gang or any of those other folks that are running around out there, they can point to that and go, "Look, this one lone dude here is about to go take them down and put an even bigger hole in the dam." Um, and this may be my opportunity to grab and advance some more power because that is what all of Westeros is about. That they may see it as an opportunity, maybe not for Dunk. They don't really care about him. He's just the tool that's knocking the
Right.
hole in the dam. But they're going to take advantage of that to snag their own as much power as they can at that point.
Yeah, I think we are seeing a point where the Targaryens have lost a lot of their, I don't know, etherealness because they're dragonless at this point. And you're right. I think it's a good opportunity for somebody to see this as an opportunity to join in. And I think if you go back to what the last season of House of the Dragon was about, even though it was a complete stall season and I hated every minute of it, it's about looking at what the people, like, inside the city mean and how they can drive what is happening, and you can't lose them. So I think we're seeing that kind of, ripple into this one where you see that people have lost faith in the Targaryens, or they don't need to put up with their crap anymore, so they're gonna throw crap at them instead.
Yeah,
So now this is an opportunity for somebody to be like, okay, I get numbers on my side if I go up against them here, and I'm on the side of right. And look at how good this guy is. He's all about just being a good guy and using that to kind of pin a new advantage on what they see as somebody who's on their way down.
Yeah, no, I like that. Before we check out, I did want to ask about the scene with Dunk and the guy from the Apple Dumpling Gang having the cider in the tent. What did you think of his speech of kind of what the world privately says about the Targaryens kind of behind their backs, that they're not as willing to. 70 years ago, they definitely weren't as willing to say it, but now they're at least willing to whisper it a little bit more.
Yeah. He also feels like he has to couch it at the end too, because he thinks that he's with somebody who feels the exact same way that he does. And then when Dunk isn't really taking a side in that conversation as much as he would like, he's like, well, they're not all that bad, and he has to kind of backpedal it a little bit because he's like,
Yeah,
maybe I just messed up real bad here. But I think those are all things that people had thought for a long time. It's showing you an outside perspective on this is the vitriol in which other people, like, who are more than just a cog in the wheel. This is what the rest of the wheel thinks of the Targaryens at this very moment, and that they don't fit anymore, and they're ready for a fall.
yeah, yeah. 100% agree on that. And I had something else I was going to say, and I can't remember what it was now, so it doesn't matter. Um, but yeah, I thought that he had made a kind of a good point there about that was kind of the what everybody is thinking at this juncture, and those whispers will continue to get louder until Robert's Rebellion, when they finally fall in the original series.
Hmm. Yeah, and this is the lead up to that, right? I can't remember if they said what the time difference was. If it was,
I
I guess
think
it would
we're
have to be 30, 40 years, somewhere in there.
oh no, I think we're like 200 years before that, because they said
Well,
that Egg was Daenerys's great 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 grandfather.
oh, okay. I thought Jamie was the one who killed
No,
Aegon, so maybe it was somebody else.
but the Maester who was in the original Game of Thrones is Egg's brother.
Oh, okay. The really old guy, right?
Yeah, the really old blind guy. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, because you remember he was revealed as a Targaryen at some point. And on his deathbed, they actually showed a thing. They actually showed on his deathbed he actually says Egg's name. So,
Hmm. Okay.
but yeah, so that's how all of that ties together and all that kind of fun stuff.
Nice.
Yeah, the episode this week will be dropping on Friday night for those who have not heard, because they're playing some kind of football game on Sunday. I don't know. I've never heard of it. It's
They still have that thing?
Yeah, they still have it, even though that team from Kansas City isn't playing in it. So I guess they're allowing other teams to participate now, which I think is great. Um,
Very kind of them.
yes. So they didn't want to compete with that, which is completely understandable. So they pushed that up to Friday to give you all weekend to watch it, and then it'll be back on Sunday uh, the next week.
For the
But I do
finale.
think yeah, I do think next week will be interesting to see kind of the fallout of kind of what we've seen, Dunk's reaction to it, the Targaryen family reaction to it, then obviously, the back half of 7 and all of 8 are probably going to be a joustapalooza, um, with some type of well, we've already had the training montage with the horse, but some type of jousting montage where Dunk is eating up the brackets.
Hmm. I think if this holds to the Game of Thrones style, we get our most action-packed episode here, and then the finale is where the pieces fall. It seems like a lot of the times in a lot of seasons that they had, probably 1 through 5, the big moments like the red weddings and stuff like that, they happened in the episode before the finale. So maybe we're going to get a lot happening in this final episode, or maybe they're going to treat it completely differently, the way that they've been treating these openings a little differently too.
Yeah, that's true. We'll see how much of the original series was how much was Benioff and Weiss versus how much was George R. R. Martin's writing, because
Hmm.
George is very heavily involved in this series because this is his favorite piece of Westerosi history that he's written. So he's very involved in this series. So it'll be curious to see if, like you said, if they follow that old path, where you have your big blowout in the penultimate episode, and then the fallout in the finale, or vice versa. So curious to see what shakes out next week. But either way, next couple of weeks ought to be very, very interesting in terms of action. They're already renewed for season 2, so which gives them also a chance to do a little bit of cliffhangery stuff as well, since they know they've already got that in the books. So curious to see how all this shakes out here in the next couple of weeks.
When you said that they're already like greenlit for season 2, I just imagined, like, because we get the context of, there's this several books about their travels together. I imagine like old school Incredible Hulk, where he goes to a different city each week and he turns into the Hulk and he, smashes stuff and then he fixes stuff and then he's on to the next city, like Monster of the Week style. I was imagining something like that, but I'm hoping it doesn't end up being like that. Or The Mandalorian for people Doug's feed.
Yes. Yeah, I'm definitely a big Creature of the Week season 1 type thing, and then when they go to longer story arcs in seasons 2 and 3, it's not as much fun. But yeah, I can totally see them doing that, just taking it as a traveling road show for next season. With this, I know the point that I was going to make now. Coming off of your point about Dunk not wanting to choose a side, just like we see in The Witcher, and Geralt trying to not choose sides. Eventually, if you don't choose a side, the sides are going to choose for you. And I
Hmm.
think that is very much what we saw here today with Dunk. Was he was trying to stay out of politics as much as he could, and then now he's thrust hip deep into the middle of it because they broke his girlfriend's finger, and his squire is now revealed to be one of the enemy. So lots of drama.
I think without that interaction though, where he sees the finger get broken, the only interaction that he had with the Targaryens is the one where I think it's Baron says that you're in, I'll get you into the fight. And so he's got that context. That's his only context for them outside of what's happening right in front of him. And so that shifts what he may be like, oh well, I don't know enough about them, or he has enough of an opinion now to weigh in on what's happening.
Yeah, I think if he didn't break her finger, I think that scene might go a little bit differently, because obviously he's not going to react quite as aggressively to.
Hmm.
Um, Maybe he tries to talk as opposed to just come up straight up and just punch him in the face and then give him the old heave ho over the shoulder. So, but again, drama. That's what we're here for. All right, Chris. Any other notes before we take off for the week?
No, I think it's going to be exciting to see what happens next.
Yeah, I agree. So catch back up with us. It'll probably be Tuesday again next week because again, some football game. Just to give us time to watch through all of that and get things ready. But we'll let you guys know. Other than that, we will see you next time. And thanks for stopping in. Bye bye.